right. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Katie Monahan. I'm a communications strategist here at the Ohio Arts Council, and I am pleased to welcome you to today's webinar, Artist Opportunities, Funding to Support Professional Growth. So I know we have a lot of people on the call today, and everyone is really eager to learn more about this project support funding opportunity. But before we get started, there are, of course, just a few housekeeping items that I need to go over. So there we go. First, everyone tuning in today is in listen-only mode, but that doesn't mean that you can't ask questions. If you have a question at any point during the presentation, go ahead and type it into the Q&A box there in your control panel. I'll monitor those questions throughout the webinar, and we'll be sure to save time at the end during the dedicated Q&A session to get to all of those questions. Again, please be sure to use the Q&A box. It's easier for us to track the questions that way, and we don't want to miss anybody. Next, live captioning is available for today's webinar, and you can access those captions by clicking on the closed captioning icon in your control panel. And if you have audio issues or trouble connecting, we recommend refreshing your browser. And if that doesn't work, try logging off and logging back in. And also, please keep in mind that because we are presenting from different locations, there may be some variations in bandwidth or internet stability. So if the sound fluctuates or somebody freezes up for a minute, thank you in advance for bearing with us. I promise you we will keep on rolling through any of that. And finally, we are recording today's webinar, and that recording will be available on our webinars page at oac.ohio.gov/webinars and on our YouTube channel by early next week. And everyone who registered for this webinar will also receive a follow-up email containing the link to that recording and a link to the slide deck. All right, I think that is it for housekeeping. So next, I would like to welcome today's presenters, my wonderful colleagues, Kathy Signorino and Chaz O'Neill of our Artist Programs Office. They are here to tell us all about this project support initiative for artists. Kathy, Chaz, thanks so much for being here. I will let you two take it from here.
Thanks so much, Katie. Always do a great job introducing us. I just wanted to let you know that my name is Kathy Signorino. I am the Director of Individual Artists here at the Individual Artist Program here at the Ohio Arts Council, and I am in my 28th year here at the Arts Council. So I've spent lots of fun time working with artists over the years. So I hope that you find this webinar informative and exciting. Chaz?
Hi, everybody. I'm Chaz O'Neill, and I'm the Individual Artist Programs Coordinator here at the Ohio Arts Council, tuning in from the Rhodes Tower in Columbus, Ohio. This is my, been here since October of 2021, and as an artist myself, I am deeply appreciative of this new initiative, and I know it's going to help a lot of people, so I'm excited to tell you about it.
Great, thanks, Chaz. Let's get going on it. So let's look at our agenda of what we're going to cover today. First, I'll go over the program overview, and this is really explaining what this new Artist Opportunity Program supports. Then we'll look at the guidelines. Chaz will go through those and highlight important parts of the guidelines for you to understand. He will then walk you through the ARTI application on how to apply. We will look at some tips to help you make a successful application. We'll cover things that you should think about when making your application. And then I'll cover a little bit what happens after you submit. And this is usually the application and the panel meeting information and the rest of the funding cycle information. Okay. This is the program overview. We're getting to know the Artist Opportunities Program a little bit. Let's dive into what exactly this new initiative is and how it came to be. So, Chaz and I have heard from you. We have heard from you a lot about needing a program that can help you support you both professionally as artists and also projects that you might want to do. So that's a #1 question that Chaz and I get from folks that call us and say, hey, do you have a program that could support this exhibition or this professional development opportunity that I want? And unfortunately, up until this point, we were saying, no, I'm so sorry. Here's some other resources that we can share with you. But now we have this program, so we're super excited. And this also our agency did the equity gap project, which looked at where we were kind of falling down in certain areas of our funding as an agency, this was a big area that artists talked about, was having the way to access our funds for projects. So it helped us to know that, again, another message from the field that a project support program was really needed. And other aspects of this program that we were really excited about is that this program will help us get our funds out into different areas of the state that maybe we're not reaching currently, and also to help support all different types of disciplines that artists work within. And so that was another great thing. One thing that we are already aware of is that this is going to be a very competitive process because the need is great. We have, opened the application in January, and we already have a fair number of applications, and the deadline is not even until May. So just let you know that it is going to be a very competitive process because the funds are limited. So what exactly is this Artist Opportunity Grant? We kind of broke it down into a number of different ways that I'll get into in the next slide, but this really is a way for you as an artist to help support your professional growth. It is a way to help also support projects that you're doing within your community, and it is for artists of all disciplines and any stage of their career and any type of artist practice. We have two different areas of funding. One is for our emerging artists of $5,000, or sorry, $5,000, that would be great, $500 award. And we define an emerging artist as somebody who has consistently worked within their chosen art form for more than 3 years and has demonstrated strong artistic potential and want to develop their careers. We also have our professional artist category, and this is request up to $2,500. And this is what we define a professional artist as someone who devotes a major portion of their time to creating, practicing, performing, or teaching their chosen art form and receive some type of monetary support from this endeavor. So those are our two areas. And so you will be defining if you're an emerging artist or if you're a professional artist. As we get further into the guidelines area that Chaz will be going over, you'll see the requirements for the support materials and how those are different for these two different categories. So here's the 3 types of project support that you can request through this Artist Opportunities. One is where you are asking for support for a new like exhibition, performance, screening, readings, publications, anything where you're sharing your work with an audience. So either if you're a writer and you have a publication that you want to have maybe edited or actually put to print, if you're visual artist, of course, and you need exhibition support, that is definitely one part of the application that you can request. Another is if you want to develop something of your own artistic making. So these are domestic, which means that they must be in the United States, because we've already had that question about residencies, international residencies. These are for domestic opportunities. So say you want to go to a conference or artist residency, workshop, fellowship, master classes, or an apprenticeship. Those are all where you go and you get training by somebody else in your given art form. And then if you want somehow to advance your career. So say you have, you need new marketing materials built, or you want a website built for yourself as an artist, or if say you want to hire somebody to take professional photographs of your work, or if you want to hire an editor for your publication, those are all possible within this grant program. One thing is if you are looking to purchase equipment, maybe a new camera, a printer, a computer, something like that, then of course it can't exceed the $1,500 for capital expenditures. So now we are going to hand it over to Chaz for him to talk about the guidelines.
Awesome, exciting. All right, thank you, Kathy. The first thing I'm going to talk about today is how to find the program guidelines and then walk you through those. First, you're going to visit our website, which is oac.ohio.gov. And under the Grants tab, you'll select the Grants Info and Guidelines. Once you click on that, you're going to come to an area where you can kind of click a few different things. You'll select individual artists, and you'll scroll down to find you'll kind of expand, you'll see all the grant programs that we offer. And you'll scroll down to find the artist opportunities area. And then you will click on the download the PDF link there. And so I also want to touch on some examples of what our idea candidates for funding are. Remember that with a deadline of May 1st, the grant program is for projects that will take place July 1st of the current year through June 30th of the following year. And so your projects must take place during this eligible period to be eligible for funding. And so here are some examples that Kathy may have touched on before here of some projects you can request funds for. Exhibition support to cover costs of framing, shipping, space rental, supplies, and promotional materials. Hiring an editor for your publication, an illustrator for your children's book, a producer for a music album, or a stage manager for a theatrical play. You can have a website built, or you can hire a professional photographer to document your work. Taking a class or participating in a domestic residency or a workshop series to enhance your skills. As Kathy already said, please note we cannot fund projects that take place out of the country. Or you can put on a performance or stage a play of your work. So those are all great examples. So let's go back to those guidelines, and we encourage you to really read the guidelines and the review criteria to make sure you hit on as many of these review criteria as possible when you write your narrative and upload support materials into the RD system. So let's review those review criteria now. The first one is program quality, and that's worth 15 points. This is out of a total of 60 points total. Program quality, 15 points. Panelists will want to see an evident skill in an artist chosen discipline and a commitment to advancing the artist chosen art form. Panelists will see this in your resume, they'll see it in your bio, they'll see it in your support materials and in your audio and visual writing samples. Community engagement, which is 10 points. The project will increase the applicant's ability to share their work in the community. So panelists will want to see a community engagement aspect to your project. These, again, could be a performance. You could hold a community workshop or a public exhibition, a poetry reading or a book signing or a concert, for instance. Defining and measuring success, which is 25 points. This is where the applicant has established a quality plan and clear goals for the project. The outcomes advance the career of the artist. Applicants' proposed project demonstrates artistic, educational, and/or cultural value. And this is where you'll talk about your timeline and the goals within the grant period. One of the most commonly missed areas of opportunity is we see in many applications is where applicants don't explain the timeline very well. And we often hear panelists say, I wish they just had a more detailed timeline. And this is where you'll tease out all those details of the project. And then there's resource management, which is worth 10 points. The project budget is complete and the support and supports the goals of the activity. The applicant just demonstrates the capacity to complete the proposed project. And you'll see here in a few minutes that we added a new budget module in the RD system, and you'll be required to complete the budget by entering amounts for each total expense. But you also want to write a detailed description of each of those line items in the budget. For instance, if you entered $550 for a budget item labeled artist fees or honoraria, you should explain what that expense is. Maybe it's an editor or a website developer or a photographer. choreographer, an illustrator, etc. And if you're wondering what I'm referring to, again, what is this budget item? Don't worry, I'm going to be showing you some examples of what the budget module looks like in a few minutes. And also, here's like an expert tip. To show good grantsmanship, you should include estimates or resumes of the professionals you want to hire for services. You can also upload these items in your support materials. So these are the support materials you're required to upload. The following is support materials are required for emerging artists. This is a artist resume or a biography, work samples, which may include up to 12 images or at least 2 audio samples or video samples, writing samples, all not more than 3 years old. And then the only difference for the professional artists is that the resume, we need to have a resume and a biography or artist statement. So it's both those plus the 12 images, audio samples, writing samples, not more than 3 years old. Again, these items are a big part of those 15 points in the program quality portion of the review criteria. So we do stress high quality documentation of artwork and professional resumes, okay? Let's talk about how to apply. Next, we're going to talk about how do you go about applying and to submit your application into the ARTI system. To begin your application, you can always get to ARTI one of 2 ways. You can go directly to the website, which is ohioartscouncil.smartsimple.com, or you can go back to the website, again, oac.ohio.gov, and find the grants tab again, and then select the ARTI login. It's right below the grants info and guidelines. This is what the login screen looks like. If you're an existing user, you can simply log in. If you are new to the system, you'll need to register a new profile first. So just click that register button. Then you'll kind of complete an individual artist, you'll register it as an individual, and you'll complete the little form there just to kind of get you set up. Once you're signed in, you'll land on the ARTI home screen. You can begin a new application, which is what we're going to do next. But if you've previously opened an application, you've worked on it, you logged out, and you want to come back to continue working on it, you will go to open an active application. And just for future reference, you will utilize the other one on the right, view current past awards, to sign your grant agreement and to submit your final report. And I do have one thing to add here. In the personal profile section, if you're brand new to the system, your personal profile is not yet fully complete. Before you submit your application, you must go to the personal profile section and add your county and your legislative district numbers in order for you to submit your application. You'll get an error message if you do upon clicking the submit button. This is the #1 thing that trips people up on the deadline day. So we recommend that you do that. The best resource to locate those district numbers is by going to the Ohio Secretary of State website. So you click on begin a new application, and that will take you to a list of the open funding opportunities available to you. Here you can also find the guidelines, the PDF guidelines for the grant program. I also want to take a moment here to talk about other funding opportunities we offer for individual artists. We have a traditional arts apprenticeship program where mentor artists and apprentices work together through one-on-one teaching to grow and pass on folk and traditional art techniques. We also have our Artists with Disabilities Access Program. This grant is nearly identical to the Artist Opportunities Program. If you identify as a person with a disability, you can apply for both ADAP and the Artist Opportunities Grant. However, you must apply with 2 different projects. And if you are fortunate enough to be recommended for both grants, you can only receive one of these grants per fiscal year. So you'll have to choose. And if you are wondering where the Individual Excellence Award application is, that application opens on June 1st of every year. Again, you can find all the guidelines here, or you can go back to the grants tab on the website to find the guidelines as well. So let's go back to artist opportunities and click the blue apply button. The first thing you will come to is you'll enter a project start date and end date. Again, the earliest you can submit for a project is July 1st of the current year, and the latest your project can go is June 30th of the next year. Please note, if you are awarded an Artist Opportunities Grant, you will most likely not receive your funds until mid to late August. So we do caution applicants who have an early project start date. We advise you not to book that residency or that venue until you are notified of your award in late July or early August. Okay, so let's click Continue to Application. If you are a returning Artie user, you'll notice a few changes to the application workflow. We made the application one long page rather than breaking it up into several separate tabs and pages. You'll want to enter a project title at the top of the page. And you'll also notice the project start date and end date here. So in case if you need to make changes later, you can edit those there. You'll notice that you can jump to a section on the right-hand side of the screen to track your progress, or you can quickly move about the application. The buttons at the bottom are Save, of course, to save your work that you've done so far. We urge you to use this button early and often. Artie does tend to time out if you are not actively working on it, so we don't want you to lose anything. There's a check for errors function, and there's a request for feedback function. The request for feedback button will send a notice to the program coordinator, me, and Kathy as well, to take a look at your in-progress application. But we do ask you to give us time to do that. We will email you back with suggestions and comments, and we request that you do that before 2 weeks from the deadline, no earlier than 2 weeks from the deadline. And then there's the all-important Submit the Application button. So let's go over the questions that are listed in Artie. These all correspond to the review criteria in the guidelines. So again, I stress to keep those guidelines handy when you're answering these questions. The first one is the summary. This is where you're going to provide a brief summary of your proposed project, including who's going to be involved, what will happen, and where the activities will take place. Program quality. Why do you want to advance your artistic career at this time? Community engagement. How do you promote your work in the community? And who will benefit from this project? Defining and measuring success. Again, this is the timeline area. How will you specifically, how will this project specifically help you advance your artistic career? And what are your goals for the project? And then the last question is the budget question, the resource management question. How specifically will you use the grant funds if you're awarded? There is a little button at the bottom there where you'll open a budget module. And this is where you'll write, actually, no, question number 4, this is where you'll write a detailed summary of the budget we'll talk about in a second. For instance, if you enter $600 for a budget exhibition in your program expenses in the budget module, in the dialog box, you'll want to write, say that's $400 for framing, that's $100 for canvas, and $100 for paint. So once you open that budget module, it has 7 different areas where you can enter expenses in. This grant program does not require a cash match. So if your project is at the $500 limit or at or under the $2,500 limit, then filling out the budget worksheet is pretty easy. So let's take a look at 2 examples. With the one on the screen, let's say your proposed project is $1,500. You will enter your estimated expenses in the project program expenses column as needed. Then you will copy those expenses over in the OAC grant distribution column. You just see the example on the screen where each budget item is matched in the OAC grant distribution column, and then it's done. Let's take a look at another example. So what if your project is more than $2,500? Let's say, for instance, your project is $4,000 and you want to purchase a synthesizer, a microphone, and a tablet, and that all comes out to $3,000. I entered that total expense on number 4 there. You would enter the max of $1,500 in the production exhibition in the OAC grant distribution column. Reminder, the cap limit for capital expenses, such as supplies and equipment, is $1,500. But you're also requesting $250 for in-state travel, $250 for marketing materials, and $500 for a studio recording time. And all those amounts are then copied over to the OAC grant distribution column. So basically, you just don't want the OAC grant distribution total to be more than $2,500. Again, in question 4, you will want to explain how you plan on covering the additional $1,500. Are you receiving any donations? Are you funding it yourself, or do you have another funding source? You'll want to break that all out. So next, we're going to talk about support materials. There are 3 areas where you'll upload your support materials. The first one is the program quality support materials. This is where your resume, your bio, and your artist or your artist statement goes. While not required, the materials for, say, a proposed class, an exhibition, a conference, or a workshop, all go there as well. Those resumes or those professionals that you want to hire, resumes or materials related to those people, those will also go here as well. There's a max of 6 documents that you can upload here. So those are Word documents, PDF, Excel, PowerPoint, and the such. The one right below that is the upload work sample button. This is where you'll upload your image files and your MP3s or your MP4s. There is a file size limit of 10 megabytes. So if you have like a really huge video, you should either compress it or hyperlink it in the narrative section. There are hyperlink functions in each of the dialog boxes in the narrative section. We encourage you to utilize those to take panelists to other areas of website or other organizations' websites and that kind of thing. The third upload button is the upload community engagement support materials. This section is also optional. If you have newspaper or magazine articles, event flyers, brochures from an organizations you engaged with, or you have marketing materials that you want to distribute in the community, you can certainly, help visually guide a panelist on your community involvement. In question 2, you should address each item you're uploading so panelists are not left in the dark about something you uploaded and didn't mention at all in the narrative. And I do want to jump back to the upload work sample button on the previous slide and kind of talk you through the image upload and the metadata description functions. On the left-hand side, I have uploaded a video and then a JPEG of an artwork. But my file names are pretty generic. You'll notice that it's just kind of like Art7 or video. And that's on the left panel under the green image. In order to put your your best professional foot forward, you'll want to rename these images, including to include the title, the description, the media, the size, and the year created. And you'll want to do that by clicking the little pen icon under the image or the video or the sound file that you uploaded. And that will bring up a little text field where you can type in that information. I just typed in Green Diamonds, Mixed Media, 48 by 48, 2021, and then you just click Save. Also note, if you've had experience with our individual excellence awards in the past, and you've had trouble resizing your images for the image sizing requirements, you don't have to worry about that here. for this grant application. So that is all for me up to this point. I'm going to pass it back to my colleague Kathy to go over the tips and FAQs, and I will certainly jump back in during the Q&A portion of the presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, Chaz. Wow, I learned so much about this grant program from what you went over there, Chaz. So thank you for that. So a little bit, some tips, and this might be repeated a little bit from what Chaz said, because these are very important items that you should think about while you're writing your application. So first off, present your project as if you're talking to someone who has no prior knowledge of you, your work, or your discipline. Give some background about yourself as an artist. How long have you been working within this medium or on this project? If this is a new direction for you as an artist, let them know that. And if this is a community-based project, who is the audience that you're trying to reach? Those are all very important items that you should include within either the summary that you're writing for your project or in the part with the work plan. So those are things that you should definitely talk about there. Keep your application focused and write clearly. Clear language is really important. Don't get caught up in jargon or rhetoric. Just plainly explain what, why, where, and how you're doing your project. That is one of the things that we noted from our recent ADAP application process, where the panelists were just like, I loved how clearly they described what they wanted to do, how they were going to get it done. And it didn't get into all kinds of extra information that wasn't pertinent to this particular project. Create a clear timeline and benchmark goals. We've talked about this already, you know, about the timeline, but it was talked about over and over in the ADAP panel that panelists love a timeline. They also like to see that you have thought a lot about how your project is going to affect you as an artist, and show goals, how you plan to achieve those goals through this project. Be realistic about how much you can do with these funds. Up to $2,500 for a professional artist is not very much money, and we understand that, but still you can make a little bit of an indent into what you want to do with these funds. So just be realistic, you know, about how much you can actually purchase with these funds. And then, as Chaz had mentioned, this may be a portion of a larger budget that you're working with for your project. Just be clear about the impact of these particular dollars and when you're writing that budget items. And then obtain estimates for professional services, you know, of your engineer, your photographer, your director, your editor. If you're asking for funds to hire an outside professional, then do your research and find out how much it's going to cost to hire them. Hire that web designer or that photographer to document your work, and then put those dollars in there. And of course, if you have a resume, as he said, attach that as a support material. That would just support what you're asking for. Explain or break down each budget line item. As we explained, he gave really great examples in there. In the budget breakout, we have general budget lines. So in the narrative section is where you're explaining what those big dollars are and how they're being used within that. The worst thing you can do is to have a panel trying to guess what you're using the funds for. If there's questions in their head, then sometimes the application is not scored as highly. And then, of course, quality documentation. We can't emphasize this enough. You, of course, want to show your work in the best light that you can. So we suggest that you show quality documentation, show the panel that you are working in a professional manner. Bad documentation may lead the panel to think that you don't have the capacity to fulfill this project. So don't let that be the thing that makes your application not get funded, is the fact that you haven't shown your work in the best light. A few more things. Chaz did touch on this, but clear name files for your different things that you're attaching. Here I have you know, artistresume.pdf, but I would say Kathy Signorino resume.pdf, or I would say Kathy Signorino promotional materials. Anything that makes it easier for the panelists while they're looking through your application to be able to find the pieces really quickly is great. because you have to remember that the panelists that are reviewing these applications are reviewing. I'm afraid that we're going to have a really good turnout for this. I should be happy that we're going to have a good turnout for this grant program, but they could be reviewing up to 50 or 60 applications. So we want to make it easier on them so that they don't have to hunt for information that you're providing. As Chaz mentioned, also hyperlinks within the narrative section are fantastic, especially for those large video files. Send them out to somebody. You're saying that you want to use this editor, send them out to their website as they're reading through the narrative, and they're like, oh, Joe Smith is going to be my editor. Let me go see what this guy's credentials are. Is he really qualified to do this work for this artist? So that makes it a really nice, easy way for them to review the application. Of course, we always encourage you to have a friend or peer review your application before you submit it. And it's nice, your work really well, and the project that you want to do, but putting it down and explaining it to somebody who doesn't know it, and if they're not able to clearly understand what you're trying to do, then maybe it needs to have a little bit of a rewrite. Of course, Chaz and I will happily look at your applications in the draft status that has to be submitted 2 weeks prior to the deadline. Again, the deadline is May 1st. So 2 weeks prior to that is the middle of April, and you would have to submit that request feedback button by that point. And then we will, of course, do that. You could make an application now and request feedback, and then we will, of course, give you that feedback in the next, couple of weeks. So here's a few frequently asked questions. Of course, we'll have, I'm sure, plenty of questions at the end of this, but can I request funds to pay myself as an artist? Yes, as long as you're doing a community-based project or teaching a class or a workshop, something where you are the artist that is doing the project, then yes, you can pay yourself. You can put some artist fees in there to pay yourself, especially on those community-based projects. Can I use these funds to travel out of state? Yes, we do have a exception in our guidelines for out-of-state travel, and that is for professional development expenses. So if you're going to a conference, a workshop, a residency, and you need to be able to get there, you can request some of those funds for out-of-state travel. And this is just if you have some more questions about funding restrictions that we might have at the Arts Council. Of course, we suggest that you read the funding restrictions part of our guidelines. And then another one, can I use work that I made as a student in my support materials? Sure, you can, especially if that's within the 3-year period. That is what is required. But you can do that as a student. You just cannot be a student when you apply. You cannot be in grad school, you cannot be in undergrad, and you cannot be in high school. You have to be 18 years or older in order to be able to be eligible for this program. Okay, so what happens after submission? So once the applications are submitted, May 1st is when we get all of our applications. Chaz and I and the wonderful ladies in the investment office will look for everything, make sure everything is complete. We'll look and make sure things are eligible. And if there's any revisions that we might need to request, we will do that in a pretty timely manner. And then we will notify you of when the panel meeting will be, and so that you can put that on your calendar. As with all OAC grant programs, the OAC holds open virtual panel meetings, and we bring together panelists that consists of artists and curators and administrators of all different types of disciplines and backgrounds to review these applications. The panelists have been sent all of the materials. They have them for 4 to 5 weeks where they review everything and score everything. And then they come together in this open panel meeting to discuss the strengths and weaknesses of each of the applications. And they have scored them, but they will not be announcing those scores during this meeting. So the meetings are, like we say, open to the public as part of the Ohio Sunshine Law, where anything that is adjudicated for state tax dollars. It must be open to the public, so that we hold those open panel meetings. And so you can tune in on Zoom and see the proceedings, hear the comments about your application, and then about the other applications that are in the pool. And so we really want to encourage you to do that if possible. One thing is that these panel meetings are not recorded. So if by chance you are, at work or you're teaching a class or something and you can't tune into the Zoom for that particular time, it will not be recorded, but you can write to us and ask for comments, a summary of comments that were made about your application. Chaz and I did that. We did it for our Individual Excellence Award panels that we just had, and we had over 60 people that wrote to us and asked us for the comments about their applications. So we will happily provide those to you. Like I said, no application scores or funding decisions are actually announced at the panel meeting. What happens is within 1 week of the panel meeting, we will send the application scores. We send a list of all application scores to all applicants, so you can see where you rank within the 60 points available in the criteria. Once that is done, the OAC leadership looks at all the scores and determines the funding cutoff. This many applications, these top ranking scores, and where can we fund to based on the budget that we have for this program. And then just a reminder that the projects for this must take place between July 1st of the current year through June 30th of the following year. So that application deadline again is May 1st. So you would not be applying for something that is taking place in April of 2023, but April of 2024 is completely eligible. Questions? Chaz, and here's our contact information. Of course, if you don't have a pen or anything, you can always find our contact information on our website. We love to talk to people, so give us a call or send us an email if you have a specific question. We do have a couple of deadlines prior to this one. We have our Traditional Arts Apprenticeship Program, which is April 1st. So if you're interested in that program, of course, reach out to us. We also have our Artists with Disabilities Access Program, which is also May 1st. And so, people will be writing and asking questions about that program as well. So definitely reach out to us. And questions? What other kind of questions do people have?
Yeah, thank you so much, Kathy and Chaz. That was a lot of information to get through. I just wanted to remind folks that if you missed any portion of this webinar or you want to go back and watch it again, we are recording the presentation and we will send that link and the link to Kathy and Chaz's slide deck along to you by early next week at the latest. So you'll have all of that information at your fingertips. I also wanted to remind everyone, if you do have questions, we have quite a few lined up here in the Q&A box, but if you still have more questions, feel free to drop them there in the Q&A box. Please use the Q&A. It's a little bit easier for me to track them. And we have a few minutes here to answer questions. If we run out of time, don't worry. I'm tracking all the questions here. We have your email addresses. Kathy or Chaz will follow up with you to answer your question. We'll make sure we get to everything, either here or offline. So let's get started. Kathy, Chaz, you can kind of take turns handling these, but we have had a lot of questions. You mentioned this is likely to be a very competitive process. Do you have any idea of, how many grants we will be able to offer? And, can you talk a little bit more about first come, first served basis and what exactly that means? We've had a few questions about that.
Sure. Chaz, do you want me to handle that one? Well, since this is the very first year of this initiative, I don't know what our budget actually is at this point for this program. What we did in order to make this program possible is we had sunsetted our residency programs that we had supported for years, and that helped us get a pool of money that we could kind of set aside. Our budget, our agency budget, has not been set yet. Donna Collins, our executive director, is in the middle of our budget testimony, And so she's already done the House, where she has gone and spoken to them about the budget and advocating for more grant dollars in our budget. And so she still has to do the Senate. And so then we'll find out, I think it's usually soon after the new fiscal year, which is after July 1st, what our agency budget is. We are hoping for an increase. So that's a lot to say. I have no idea. And it's not about first come, first serve in this particular program. It really is about how well the artist has told their story and shared how this request will impact themselves as an artist and possibly a greater community as well. It does, we're not going to weigh it, the ones that are community based stronger than other ones. It's really about, the strongest application and how big of an impact it is. So we hope for a fair number. And then if we have an overwhelming response, which Chaz and I are already thinking that we will, then hopefully that means that next year, when this program runs around again, that our budget is even bigger. When we established this program, long answer, sorry, everybody, but when we established this program, when we did our research, we fashioned this somewhat after the Arizona Arts Council's program that they have for artists. And I talked with the coordinator there, and she said her program about tripled over each year. It tripled in size. So we understand that there's a great need, and we're just hoping that we can let the legislature know that the artists need these dollars to be able to have impact on themselves as artists and also their communities. Sorry, long answer.
No, that was a great answer. Thank you so much, Kathy. That's really helpful to know. We also have had a few people ask, so we just talked about how competitive this process is. We have also had a few people ask if you can submit more than one application, if you have different projects that you were hoping to fund.
I'll handle that one. So you cannot submit more than one application. One application per person is allowed. Like I said, there is the option for, if you identify as a person with disability, you could apply for ADAP and RDOPS, but they have to be two separate projects. And if you are recommended for both, if you're lucky enough to get that through, then you can only receive one of those grants. So.
Thanks for the clarification there, Chaz. Chaz and Kathy both also mentioned ADAP and traditional arts apprenticeships, some of our other individual artist grants. I'll be sure to link to, we've done webinars on those in the past, and we have some great resources. I'll be sure to link to those in the follow-up email so that you'll have information about those as well. Next, I think there may have been a discrepancy somewhere back on the slide deck or in one of the arty examples. There was a little bit of confusion. The work samples need to be within the past 3 years, not 5, correct? Okay. And can you, does that mean 2020 to 2023, 2021? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we always do calendar years. So it'd be 20, 21, 22, and then this part of 23.
Fantastic.
Yeah, we did find a discrepancy between what Artie said and what the guidelines said. And the Artie said 5 years and the guidelines are 3 years, and it is 3 years.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification there. Can you talk a little bit about, you touched a little bit on the panel process. Can you talk a little bit more about who our panelists are and how many typically sit on a panel? Dive into that a little bit.
Sure, Chaz is the panelist whisperer. That's what I like to call him.
Yeah. So I'm usually charged with hiring or contracting or getting our panelists ready to review these applications. We've already kind of secured those panelists. Those are kept a secret until the day of the panel meeting. So the morning of the panel meeting, you can go online and find their bios and see who's been reviewing your work. We only do that because we don't want you to research them and kind of influence your application in the wrong way or the good way. and get an advantage over somebody else. So we do have 6 panelists, so maybe that's going to be two days of panel meetings that'll be happening. That's what we're anticipating. So they will have 4 to 5 weeks to or review your application and all the other ones that are in their queue. So they are. We try to get a wide array of media focus. Whether they're artists or administrators, ethnicity, diversity as well. So we try to kind of get a nice mixture of people to review these applications. So that way kind of everybody's represented.
Fantastic, thank you. We have time for a few more here. Someone asked, can you apply for funding to reprise maybe a project or a performance or something that you have done in the past?
Sure, if it's a new venue, if it's a new place that you're presenting it, if this is a performance, if it's a new audience, yes, I mean, that's perfectly fine. It doesn't have to be a brand new work. If it's something that you're staging on a new space, that's fine. Yeah.
Great. Let's talk a little bit about that expense report. So you mentioned kind of putting in some amounts there in those boxes, and Artie, do you need to do specific, will there be like specific line items for each thing that you need to check on? So will the budget require an expense for every, screw, bolt, nut, paint tube, anything like that?
No, you can keep it pretty general. Like, yeah, painting supplies, like I need $100 for paint, $100 for canvas. You don't need to break it down to every single little piece, like every single little brush or every single little piece. But as long as you can kind of group things together in your narrative section, really kind of break those down and just be clear but concise, and not you don't have to be too that specific about each little thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Here's a question. So what about artist collaboratives? Are collaboratives allowed to apply for this funding?
Yeah, we've had that question. As you can tell, we haven't really come up with I mean, this is for an individual and this is for an individual to get funding. So say there was a collaborative that was putting on an exhibition where it's a couple of artists that work together. I mean, I guess we can have an open conversation here in this, because I'm not really sure, Chaz. I mean, if each artist came in for the part that they are creating for that work, I think that they could do it.
They would all have to be awarded, right?
Yeah, they would have. That's interesting. Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, as you can tell, this is such a new program that we're still kind of struggling a little bit with how things run, because we haven't had a project support program like this since we had our Artists and Communities program a long time ago. So yeah, if there was a main art, like the artist applying was kind of the main person who applied, and they listed all their collaborators and their resumes and all that stuff. But I think that the main artist would be on the hook for the tax burden at the end of the year. And I don't think we can break that grant amount up, just the way this is constructed, that one person would receive $1,000 and another person would receive $1,000. So you have to consider that if you really want to go down that road. Yeah.
Thank you both for working your way through that one.
Thanks.
Surprise one at you there. If something happens during the time period of the grant between, when they are awarded the funding and the final report, if things shift, if things change, how do you handle that? Do you just amend those things during the final report stage? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you definitely want to contact us if there's going to be a major shift. You've had say maybe a medical emergency or something like that. Please contact us as soon as you can and let us know that you might not be able to make it, or you might not be able to complete your grant program, or you'd say something fell through with a venue or something like that. We can amend the application or the grant agreement. And then we can also explain a little bit of, when it comes time for the final report, we can put those amendments in there too, just so everything's clear. But do contact us if something should come up. Kathy, did I miss anything there?
No, yeah, we understand the nature of planning events, of doing things. And so oftentimes if the artist were to write to us and say that there was this change, we had to shift venues, like, or something like that, we can just change what the grant agreement says and then make that change. And so it would go through an approval process from our investment office and our deputy director, just to make sure that all of that is okay with them. But yeah.
I think we have time for one more question here. I just wanted to remind everyone, if we didn't get to your question, no worries. We have it recorded in the Q&A, and Kathy and Chaz will follow up with you very shortly after this webinar. We'll make sure you get your answer. But let's see, I have one up here. So exhibitions, performances, things like that you're requesting, do those have to take place in Ohio?
Yes. Big nod. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Ended on an easy note there.
Yes. Yes. I mean, these are state tax dollars, so we want the effect of these dollars to be on Ohio communities. So yes.
Fantastic. Well, is there anything else, Kathy or Chaz, that you would like to add before we go today, before we send everyone off for the rest of their afternoons?
Sure. Kathy, we talked about this earlier today about the Excellence Awards,
yeah.
5-year period. If you were wondering what the kind of that fine print on the guideline says about the 5-year wait period, if you are awarded an Excellence Award, so that 5-year wait period is for the fiscal year 2024. So anybody who receives an Excellence Award for this upcoming Excellence Award round, whoever receives one of those Excellence Awards will not be eligible for 5 years to apply for the Artist Opportunities Grant. It's not for anybody who just previously won an Excellence Award for FY23. You are eligible to apply for an Artist Opportunities Grant. Kathy, if you can elaborate.
Yeah, that's great. And the reason that this was put in, just for folks to know, is that we feel that these funds are going to be pretty limited. And if you were able to receive a $5,000 Individual Excellence Award grant, then you are at a capacity that possibly, I don't know, I don't want to say everybody needs support and everybody needs dollars, but we're just trying to stretch our dollars as much as possible. And so they felt like we wanted to put this guideline in there so that we could support as many artists as possible.
All right. Well, I think that does it for today. Thank you both, Kathy and Chaz, for being here to walk us through the application tips and some best practices here. As they mentioned, Kathy and Chaz are both available to answer your questions. They are fantastic and they're here to help. So, and like I said, if you did miss any of the webinar, we did record, and a copy of the recording and the slide deck will be emailed to you. It'll also be available on our webinars page at oac.ohio.gov/webinars and on our YouTube channel by early next week. I think that does it for today. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in, and best of luck with those applications. We'll see you next time.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.